okay, here we are on day 13. And as I was reading the principle for today, I was thinking, oh, I just love how God works and how the authors were just so in tune to the precedence that needs to take place in exercising love in our relationships and definitely with God. So it starts with, for this week, love cherishes. So showing people that you value them. And then love lets the other win, of setting our interests aside and being willing to compromise. And then finally, for today, on day 13, love fights fair. And so our scripture for today is Mark 3:25. If a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. And the dare for today, which I don't think I read the one for day 12, but it's right there for you. I know you can read it. So, but today is talk with your spouse about establishing healthy rules of engagement. If your mate is not ready for this, then write out your own personal rules to fight by. Resolve to abide by them when the next disagreement occurs. So it was, the first thing that came to my mind when I originally got on this day was like, well, I don't fight with God. Well, no, wait a minute. It's pretty funny because I do. I just don't do it out loud. And maybe not with words, but my actions certainly will reveal otherwise from time to time. Like when I'm fighting to have things my way, like we talked about yesterday, or if I'm disagreeing with others and completely losing sight of God in the equation. So, again, God's always there on that battlefield. He's cheering us on, but, how often does my pride and selfishness just drown him out? So it's just, again, learning to be quiet and listen to his promptings before we, have taken off on that roller coaster of life. And I have never been one to like to, fight, to argue. And that really stems from my childhood. And I saw how ugly arguing could be. So I never learned healthy fighting. And, which translated, just, throughout my life and not having a true relationship with God, that I didn't have any armor. I had no ammunition to work with. And so, in looking back, I can see all those pitfalls. And, and I'm just thankful today that I have an awareness and, it's not terrible not having to practice those every single day, but I will have an opportunity. I'm going to kind of, here off I go, I'm going to sideline a little bit. And so this video is the week of the February the 19th, 2018. So whenever you watch this video, not this past weekend before, my daughter and her husband were here from out of town. And they live in Abilene, Texas. I live in Houston, Texas, southeast Houston. And that's about 6 hours apart. And, they're a busy young couple. They have very time-consuming jobs like most working class people. And, my health hasn't been at a place where I could make those long trips. And so we don't get to see each other as much as we prefer. And, particularly for her, she lived here her entire life, and most all of our family is here. And so it's been a challenging transition for her being away from family as she embarks on this new season in her life. Well, they had talked from time to time about me coming to Abilene and the medical care there just isn't what I need it to be for me. And they proposed something very different on their last visit, and it was if I would consider moving to Central Texas with them, and so that we would share a home, and to meet many desires of having more mama time, and also alleviate the stress of always knowing I'm 6 hours away if something happens. And unfortunately, it's not if, it's when. And cancer is just kind of tricky that way, and will manipulate your time far more than you care to think about. But so anyway, there's a point to this. As we're considering merging lives, this is one of those things that is going to be such a growth opportunity for me, and that I'm looking forward to, of respecting her as an adult, an independent adult. She does not need my input. She may ask for it, but she doesn't, that's her choice and not my role or responsibility, which, granted, that really ended years ago, but I sort of, held on like super glue. But anyway, it's so as I'm working through these scenarios of love cherishes, love lets the other win, love fights fair, I'm now going to have an opportunity to practice these principles on a daily basis. And I find that really exciting to, put God to work and let him show me how to do this. And as opposed to a time, when I did it before, when I was in the situation before of, working or what have you, that I didn't get to practice it so much. And, and I'm one of those people that I learn by doing. And so I know what I didn't do well in the past, and I'm hopeful for the future to really engage with God in helping me navigate these new waters. So that's totally off topic, but kind of sort of relevant. But anyway, so in looking at the commentary, it talks about the things of marriage or close relationships, is that that facade begins to wither away, or the rose-colored glasses, whatever you want to call it, and that you see people that you can't always be perfect. You won't always be perfect. And so to recognize that going in, I think is a substantial part of the battle. But the thing of it is that, there will be differences. There will be hurt feelings. And it's how we move forward from those differences to build up rather than tear down relationships. And so, and that's the thing that the authors are talking about for this day, is just, okay, conflict is inevitable. So what are you going to do? And, and it's, I think a big part of it is just the recognition of what factors are in play. And for me, I would say 99.9% of the time, it's a pride issue. And there are different situations of when it's more principle based, but generally pride leads the way. And so that's when I tend to be most selfish most judgmental, which, hey, that's not my job. And I have to remind myself of that. It's not my place to judge someone else. It's my role as a Christian to bring an awareness of God's truths. But to say, to judge someone, that's not my job. And I have to remind myself of that, because we can build our own little step ladder to get up on, pedestal or podium to preach from, and which my sister and I talk about the boomerang effect, and that when we are speaking truth into each other's lives, we know for certain it's coming back around. And that's we embrace it. And so for, me moving forward into this new season is to embrace the fact that Mama's not always right. Yeah, I'm going to have to remind myself of that. Mama's not always right. She may think she's right, but she's not. But of not letting pride get in the way and to create unnecessary friction in a relationship. And it's the same thing with God, that, of when I know I've, fallen so short, but I don't want to admit it. And I've fallen short, not just because I haven't tried, but because my priorities get skewed. And so, again, that fight isn't maybe a verbal conversation with God of saying, I was right, blah, blah, blah. It's my actions that I keep, okay, I'm going to make this work. Regardless of what you're telling me, God, I'm going to make this work, and just you wait and see. And so, that's definitely a pride-driven type of conflict. And it's the willingness to see ourselves engaged in that type of unspoken conversation with God by our actions. So that's a pretty important component. And the one thing that I really, really, really liked about this particular Dare Day is at the end, in the Dare, it says, if your mate is not ready for this, then write out your own personal rules to fight by. And they give some examples of me boundaries. And that's where I went with the Think Right, Pray this week, is really focusing on these me boundaries. And they list the various verses. But, the first thing of listening before speaking. And then, to deal with my own issues up front. And then finally to speak gently and keep my voice down. And, boy, I need to make that my, my verse that I plaque on the walls. Because when I get riled up, the decibel tone of my voice just really ratchets up too. And, it's something that we, you, everyone has to practice. I don't think it ever really comes completely natural to anyone. I don't know. My daughter is very much like her dad was, in that he was very slow to react. And, if that was driven more by his profession as a police officer, that, you'd be in big trouble if you just let your emotions get the best of you. And so he was always very slow to react. And I am too, but I'm, I'm trying to think of a phrase that someone used to use about me, but it's kind of like, you don't see it coming with me. I was like, I let it build, and then it's like, pow, and off I go. And it's not pretty. And I'm thankful that's not a regular part of my makeup today. I don't like to remember those times when I could, just tear someone apart with just a quick, sharp few words, and you can't take those things back. And I'm just so thankful for the work that God's done in me that I'm not that person anymore. I'm back. I have all these alarms set because I have no concept of time. It doesn't matter how many clocks I have around. So anyway, well, that was a good place to snap me out of that little don't go there place. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about from the commentary on page 63 is that fighting fair means changing your weapons and disagreeing with dignity, and that it should result in building a bridge instead of burning one down. And isn't that a beautiful way to look at it? In that if we can, and it takes practice of, of again, inviting God onto that battlefield to fight for and with us, and to show us how to fight fair. So for this week's Think Right, Pray, how often do you find yourself rehearsing your point of view in your head versus listening to God? And how about with others? Like if you've had a disagreement with someone, and I used to spend my commute in the car just working out arguments that, have never happened. And hopefully I'm not the only person that's done that, but it is, it's something to an awareness. And so list a few examples where you've worked to build a bridge versus burning one down. And what was different in those situations? Were you asking God onto the battlefield, or what exactly did you do to help you get to that place? And then finally in prayer, thank God for his open invitation to fight for us. Call on him into your daily battlefields to lead the fight with dignity and grace. And I hope that you enjoy this week's study and all that it takes to, put into these relationships, and not just our relationship with the person across the table, but with God and with strangers, and how we can learn to cherish, allow others to win, and most importantly, fight fair. Well, blessings, y'all, and have a wonderful week. Until then, I'll see you next time. Bye.